Welcome to the Content Strategy Interviews podcast. Each week, we talk with accomplished content strategy experts to share their wisdom with our friends in the content community. And now, here's your host, Larry Swanson.
Hi, welcome to the fourth episode of the Content Strategy Interviews podcast. I'm really happy today to welcome Duane Forrester to the show. Duane is an old school SEO guy I've known and followed for years. I want to talk real quickly about how Duane and I first met. I first met him, he was a speaker at the at PubCon down in Vegas in 2010, I believe. And then we kind of connected. I think he's a big shot, and I'm just hobnobbing with him. And then I saw him about a year later. We ran into each other at Seattle Interactive, and I was doing that kind of conference thing where you're looking over the shoulder of the person they're talking to, and just kind of making eye contact and just kind of waiting. And then Duane kind of invited me into the conversation, and the guy he was talking to was Sir Mix-a-Lot. So that led me to believe that like all that you big shot SEO guys do is hobnob with celebrities, but you do other things as well, Duane. I'm going to have you tell folks a little bit about your background and how you came to be where you are at Yext today.
Yeah, and Larry, thanks for having me on the show. This is an awesome opportunity to catch up with you. I think both of us have had long and varied careers in the industry, and it's incredible, to have those moments, right? I mean, a lot of people don't realize that, they know Sir Mix-a-Lot as the musician, as the rapper, as the artist. A lot of folks don't realize that he is very heavy into the tech scene. It is something that he invests in, that he is a part of in Seattle. He's always looking for new and upcoming technologies and ideas to be a part of. So it's, for me, it wasn't surprising to kind of bump into him in that scenario. But as always, kind of cool. I mean, I grew up listening to his music, and there's that moment, right? Let's grab a photograph, but then, hey, let's talk about technology. So that happens a lot. I think, and back then I would have been 2010. So I was still running the SEO program at MSN at that point.
And that was about when you made the transition from MSN to being webmaster.
Exactly. It was just shortly thereafter. So I was kind of representing Bing unofficially at the time, and because they didn't have anyone they would put out at the conferences, and so that would kind of be me since I was going to be there anyhow. And then shortly thereafter, I ended up moving over full time and taking over the Webmaster Tools program and running that, building it out, and launching that in early 2012. We got that out. And it was awesome. I mean, being able to run SEO at that scale, at a global scale like that for a company like MSN, and then being able to move as an SEO, move inside the search engine and actually talk to the engineers and talk to the spam team and talk to the video team and talk to the news team and the map team and all of these different groups to understand exactly why they were doing what they were doing and how they were making it all happen. It gave me a tremendous respect for the processes inside a search engine. And, along the way, it opened up doors for me to compatriots that worked at Google and Yahoo, because, you are a part of a small fraternity of people who share common problems that you're trying to solve for. And so, this kind of conversation, I mean, for me, it was very light touch. It's, by no means did we have, deep conversations late into the night between, myself and a counterpart at Google or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But just being able to walk on stage, with Matt Cutts or with Gary or with Nate or any of these folks and, know the limits of what they have to work with, what they can say, what they can move forward, the requests that people make versus the ability to get work done. I understood that on a very intrinsic level because I would get dozens, sometimes hundreds of requests for things in a month. And I'd bring that forward to the engineering group and say, I've had 400 people ask me this month for this tool. And they'd just look at me and be like, 400 is not a meaningful number, and I'm thinking, right. Well, out of 2,000 people at a conference, that's 25% of the attendees have unanimously said they want this feature. Like, from my perspective, that's a pretty big deal.
That was, to me, an interesting evolution in the SEO world, was going from that complete, stay away, we're not going to tell you anything, to having people like you at Bing and Matt Cutts at Google doing that kind of outreach and education. And it never occurred, I guess it occurred to me, and I saw you guys hanging out at conferences together, but that there would be that as a probably one of the smallest fraternities in the world. Like probably
Very.
maybe at most a half a dozen of you, right?
Very. There's very few people that have occupied these spaces, and and I don't want to seem like we're overstating this or anything, because this isn't like, it's not like we get together on phone calls or hang out or whatever, but we did, and we still do understand the realities of, like, I know what it's like to be in their shoes on stage fielding questions. And I just had this experience at the last PubCon I was at. I was sitting in the audience shaking my head, embarrassed at some of the questions that were being asked from our industry. And I'm like, guys, it's been 20 years of this conversation. Like, when are you going to clue in that they can't answer these questions? This isn't the forum for that. These aren't the right people to answer those questions. And you're trying to do what? Hold them accountable for something that they don't even work on? Like,
Right.
it just doesn't make sense to me at times. And yet I understand fully, the guys are sitting up on stage from Google and they're fielding the questions, and there's precious little they can do because they literally don't work with that group that the question is about, and they have no exposure, they have no background, they have no information to base a reasonable response on.
Right.
And
Well,
then,
and that's where you have such a unique background, that you're one of the few people like you and Matt and people like that are some of the few people within the industry. You were one of the few people who had that perspective. On the outside, looking back into Google and Bing, there's a ton of SEOs trying to figure out what the heck's going on, and
oh
and
yeah,
some of them are also paying tens of $1,000s a month to Google for search ads, and I think there's some of that underlying thing is like sense of like a not entitlement, but like an
no,
expectation.
no,
We want,
exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, hey, one of those things. So I mean, you've seen the evolution of this whole industry, which has just been crazy. We've gone from like that era where back in the day you had like 10 blue links on the search engine results
Yeah.
page, and that was what everybody saw. And then we saw the evolution from that to like personalized search, and that was a huge change.
Yep.
But that was nothing compared to like the advent of mobile and all of the other contextual things that are going. Well, not just the arrival of mobile and the need to be responsive and all that, but then
Yeah.
the contextual stuff that comes with that. And one of the biggest contextual things, and the main reason I wanted to talk to you today, is the advent of voice search and the quick rise of Alexa and Google's gadgets and similar voice technologies. That's got huge implications for for SEO, and what I'm mostly interested in is the implications of that for people's content strategy. Like how do you need to be crafting and conceiving your content plan now to address this? Well, let me back up first. Have you talk about the implications of search, because some of the numbers are
Yeah.
staggering. Like as many as half of searches will be by voice, and within a couple years.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
It's been amazing, since I've moved over to Yext almost a year ago now, and my main focus has been on up and coming technologies and these kind of game changing moments, and voice search is chief among those, where we're sitting here at this very moment, and it's kind of mind blowing. I mean, when we saw smartphones hit the market, we saw the curve coming. I mean, we knew it, right? Like, they were an expensive item, but we understood the value proposition behind it. It was very straightforward. I could edit documents. I could compose longer messages. It was easier to type on the screen and so on. And then they became the entertainment medium when streaming became a much more popular scenario. And so now smartphones are just ubiquitous. They're what we have, right? So it's been very fascinating to watch that. And along the way, the folks that are kind of like watching these technologies, and this is one of the beautiful things when I was at Microsoft, I had that ability to talk with the people that were building these new technologies. And so, I was, I say I was part of the Cortana beta program. Every employee at Microsoft was part of the beta program for Cortana. It's not like it was an exclusive thing. But it was fascinating because, I immediately started to see the implications in search, where I could ask my device for information, and once you get past the usual stuff like, hey, Cortana, hey, Siri, I love you. Oh, you're great. And all this kind of crap, the fun stuff that you kind of wade in with, the silly things. Then you start getting into the execution stuff, right? Like, send a text to my wife, and the system knows who your wife is. The system then opens up, it listens, it transposes, and it gets it largely accurate depending on your scenario. when you started to see that coming along, and this is probably about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now, you dug into it and you realized that a lot of this technology came from military technology, where you had voice command systems built into the M1 Abrams main battle tank. And as you can imagine, in that environment, it has to be accurate. Like it's you've got two sides to this coin. One, it's got to be accurate. I mean, you can't have it, oh, you said launch the missiles, and no, I said go in reverse. Like
Right.
obviously
You're scaring me.
obviously there's an accuracy quotient that has to be met. And for that application, it was met. But part of that accuracy quotient would have been knowing that you had a finite number of people that you could train in dedicated commands and responses. So, dear trainee, if you say this in this way, the system will execute A, B, and C. Okay, great. That's fine if you've got like 10,000 people that you need to train, and you can all put them through the same curriculum. You can get them on the same page and they can execute the same way. That's fantastic. That kind of thing works. Reliability is great. Accessibility is great. You take that exact same scenario where maybe it's like 95 to 97% accurate, and then you unleash that on the general public, who you can't train. They run around like a herd of cats. They're not paying attention. They're mumbling. They're talking with their mouth full. We've got accents that you just are much, much more variety than you would ever get in a smaller subset of the population. And so suddenly now 95 to 97% gets us that early generation of search where it was, Siri, you're an idiot. Why don't you understand me? And that kind of scenario. And so, the businesses behind these, I hesitate to say the engines, because we've also got Amazon in here, we've also got IBM Watson in here, we've also got Samsung with Bixby in this mix. So it's beyond just the engine, if you will. And yet, now they're looking at this and they're saying the floor is 97% accuracy. It's got to be better than that. So they're striving for 98, 99% accuracy to truly feel like, okay, we've got the ability to listen to you down and we get your information correct. And the other side of the equation, the bringing you back the answer, that's relatively easy for them, because that's data lookup and the system's already built for that. We already have that. That's a legacy of the search world and crawling and everything else. But it's very much, if you will allow me this lame pun, voice search has very much turned the world of information retrieval on its ear. It is without a doubt the single biggest leap that we have seen in our industry. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, right? Personalization. Yep, that was a big deal. And everybody freaked out about it, right? It's like, oh, we don't have generic answers anymore, so we can't really optimize for that. And I don't know what Larry's doing, so how do I optimize for Larry? And, it turns out as we look back over, I'll call it 8 years of this, like, kind of irrelevant. It didn't really matter. It was a tempest in a teapot. It wasn't that big of a game changer relative to what we're looking at today with voice. Because with voice, forget about links on a page, forget about click activity. Just this morning, I got an email from Amazon. I thought it was brilliant. I'm actually going to write an article about this. I got an email from them saying, hey, if you do voice shopping today, we will give you a 15% credit. And I'm like, there we go. It has begun. Mm-hmm. Like I was thinking this weekend, obviously long weekend, we've got Cyber Monday today. We had, Black Friday on Friday. And I was thinking, well, maybe I want to go ahead and get myself an Echo Show, with a little 7-inch screen on it. Mm-hmm. And I keep staring at my Alexa and I'm like, but really, what am I getting? Like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I don't know. And now, of course, I'm sitting here thinking, well, maybe I would shop by voice if I could see the product easier. And so now suddenly that product is, now I'm back to, okay, what's today's deal on the product? Okay, it's $40 off. Do I want to spend the money on it? And this kind of thing. And I'm just like, all right, I get it. I see this, and
that leads to a question. I want to ask a question about that. Like, as you're saying that, thinking about like the difference between the different gadgets that are out there, the utility, the tool, the appliances that are doing this.
Hmm.
There's also like just picking up your phone and talking into it and asking a
Oh,
question.
completely.
Yeah. How does that, do you have is there a feel for how that's breaking down yet? Like what percent of search is happening via phone or another mobile device
No.
versus a dedicated device? No
Yeah, no,
sense.
the data's not there. Like,
Okay.
so for example, if you talk to Google and you ask them, if I go into Search Console, do you break out voice activated query instances versus, a mobile typing scenario or a desktop scenario? The answer is no. It's all combined. And so you don't see that type of stuff. Anecdotally, we could back into it, but it's total guesswork, because what we're looking at is, if I go back into my companion app for my Google Assistant or my Alexa, I can actually mark down from that the things that I asked out loud, because they're called out there that this was a voice query, right? And so I could just make an anecdotal note on this and say, oh, look at that. It turns out that 40% of my queries are done on my device versus this, so it's this device or that device. And the problem is obvious, right? It's me, it's one person, it's anecdotal, and there's no aggregate on that right now. So maybe
So
in the
it's well, that's familiar terrain to any SEO, though.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
you just got to guess, and make your best guess,
completely,
and do your own research. Like
completely.
Eric Ing and those guys will figure something out, and
Yeah, totally. I mean, and it
yeah,
could simply be a survey that we do where
yep,
we literally just ask people, look, we need you to take like an hour of your day and dig around in this. Here's a process for capturing the data, and then send it to us so we can create some kind of baseline. And, if you get 100 people, then you tell everyone, like, this is a low response rate, but this is what we're seeing on first pass.
yeah.
Don't know. I mean, there could be something to it.
Right. So one of the things, but regardless of the gadget you're doing it with,
Yeah.
the stakes are so much higher in
Oh, yeah.
creating it, because you get one answer. You don't get a
Yep.
page of answers. You get one
Yep.
answer from that whatever, however it's
Yeah.
served up to you. Tell me about, like, how are you seeing, like, forward thinking companies or organizations planning for that, like figuring out, like, or what do you think can be done to prepare for that, to have that one answer ready and raring to go?
It's interesting. First off, I do want to dig into the one answer concept a little bit, right? Because
Yeah.
we have the one answer concept. That paradigm has already existed in terms of the answer boxes that we see for a lot of things that are built into search right now.
Right.
And if you actually look at what comes back, and I have, obviously, having written the ebook on this last week, if you look at what comes back in voice queries as answers, if you have the question and there is an answer box in search on Google and you're using a Google Assistant, in many, many instances, it's the answer box that gets read to you. So it's not like there's a separate scenario happening in the background because I asked the question out loud. The way the services are treating this is a voice is just another input layer. So there's no new black box behind it. It's the same old black box that's behind it. It's just, instead of typing, you have vocalization in this scenario. And so with that in mind, it makes it easier to understand some things like, how do I position myself to participate in all of this? Okay, well, if you're already participating in, answer zero, as it is, the answer box for a query, and you're already listed in there, then congratulations, you're already on the path to be the answer spoken out loud in voice search. The challenge with this is there's a lot of technical stuff, right? Obviously, and we'll get into. I'd like to reserve this and come back to it: the customer journey and how you identify yourself along that path and whatnot.
Would love to return to that. Yeah.
Yeah. But that plays a role in this, which informs the type of content, which then informs your usefulness. And then you start layering on stuff like, is my navigation intact? Can the crawlers get in and find my content properly? Is it easy to understand? Is it grammatically accurate? Is this a good user experience? Am I marked up with schema or something else that makes it easy for the engine to build trust in me? Do I have a good history? Like, all of the usual best practices around SEO now start to pop up to the top, and they take on more importance because, the things that as an SEO you debate, right? You trade A for B because you think B gives you a little more lift than A. Well, you don't have that luxury anymore. Now it's a world of, oh no, it's A through Z, everything. It's not, I'm going to pick like 50 plus 1% and nail it. And that makes me, a little bit better. And therefore I'm at the top of the page. No. When we're talking about voice search, we're talking about the literal top of the page, because when I ask the question and I get the answer, there's only one spoken aloud. I can ask systems, though, what's the next answer? And if it's appropriate, it will tell me what the next answer is. So, like a product search, for example, I could continue to drill down and ask for more and more products. Of course, what we do start seeing, though, is the next generation beyond voice search, where we end up back at visual search. Because, if you've ever gone shopping on an Alexa, it's great for reordering things that you consistently purchase and that are unique. Fantastic for that scenario. I thought I was in that scenario, and I foolishly asked it to reorder dog food for me. And a day later, I got the notice saying the dog food is shipped. And for some reason, I looked at it and I was like, when you see the emails, you only see a portion in the subject line of what the whole subject
Right.
is. And just like the first 4 characters, it was like, I don't think that's the dog food. And so I opened up the app and I looked at it, totally forgetting that I ordered dog food that was non-standard for our dogs, just a treat, and completely forgot about the purchase. But when I went back to Amazon and said order dog food, it went to my history and took the most recent one. And I had no paradigm. I just assumed that was the normal one that I would order. I said, yes, order it. So I got another case of dog food that I wasn't going to use. And I had to reorder the bag of dog food that I actually wanted. And that's where we find ourselves in this, this echo show scenario, right? Where it's because the system asks you, like, is this the dog food? And I don't know, I was in an airport somewhere, right? Something like, I can't check my pantry. And I'm thinking, yeah, I think that's the dog food. Sure. Order it, And,
Right.
and so now this is on me as a consumer completely. I could have opened the companion app at any time. But of course, in my mind, I'm taking the human lazy way. And I'm like, well, no, I just want to say, order the dog food. And I want you to order the damn dog food. That's where we're supposed to be today.
That's interesting too, because that pops some other stuff further up. Just that idea of, I guess, I want to go kind of to the content creator and what they can do. Like, how can you anticipate that? Because that's going to be a common thing. I'm thinking of, like, I ordered, my niece turned 6 a couple years ago, and I ordered her a gift certificate from American Girl, and I've been getting kind of bizarrely inappropriate messages from them ever since. And so there's obviously still some polishing to be done in all of these kinds of things. But if there was somewhere in that interaction with them, there'd been an opportunity for me to give feedback about it. They go, oh no, that was just a one-off thing. As in your case, your dog food. No, that was just a one-off treat for the dogs.
Yeah.
You could do that, but I'm just trying to think of how, whether it's in the, how exactly that could manifest in, like, product descriptions or titles, or, however you're just, it kind of gets down to almost like a information architecture level of labeling stuff. But I don't know, but there's so much else going on there. I guess, to help me anticipate what content creators can do to cope with that whole milieu that you just described.
So, I think one of the biggest shifts that happens when we start talking about content is this notion of moving away from keyword relevancy to contextual relevancy. And this is a big deal because, you think about it, the industry's, we'll call it 20 years old now. It's a little bit older. And almost all of our systems have been built around the notion of keyword relevancy. I mean, we've had tools come and go. We've had data, more or less of it, over that period of time. Still today, this is the default mode that search marketers go to, is identify keyword, build content around it, and off you go. And this is now starting to, well, let's face it, it's saturated, but it's also starting to become something different. It's still important. I mean, it's still important that we understand, whether someone is searching for an SUV or a sport utility vehicle and in which volume, because we want to be relevant for the larger volume SUV phrase instead of sport utility vehicle. Totally makes sense. But we now also have the context problem that we face, which is, am I curious about this? Is it the first time I've discovered the product and I want to know the meaning of the word? Do I have a purchase intent? And there are a lot of signals that consumers are giving off. Like, I mean, I'll use myself as an example. I was driving home the other day in my truck, and I realized that my truck is going to be 4 years old this June. And I'm kind of stunned that it's 4 years old at this point. And I immediately had this kind of moment in my head where, on one hand, I said, oh my God, I still love my truck. It's still perfect for me. It's fantastic. I don't know if I'll ever find another one as good as this. And then on the other hand, I'm like, oh, I wonder if it's time to get a new truck. And so as the engine, as the business, you need somehow to understand my signals as a consumer. Am I looking for a new truck? Or am I just interested? Or do I want more information about what I already have, because that reinforces my purchase decision from 4 years ago, makes me feel good about this big ticket item that I bought and still have. And so we do find that there's this move. Keyword research will always be there. It'll always be important. But understanding where a consumer is in their journey is exceedingly important. Telling somebody you've got the best deal on the new pickup truck when they just saw a photograph of your new styling and they thought, oh, that looks good. Immediately stepping in with the pitch and you should give us $60,000 right now. That's a bit much at that moment. And consumers are constantly giving off this data. Like, our phones are telling telling these systems where we're at all the time. So if I'm constantly driving by the car dealership and you can see that I'm constantly at the dealership, that means I'm interested in this product. I'm looking actively. And you can also understand things. If you're an ecosystem like Google, you will understand that I own one of these brands, because you will see all of that information in my email account. You will see my attachment. You will see my VIN code. You will see this stuff. So it tells you I own the product. You see an affinity because I am now on non-normal days. So on Saturday or Sunday, I'm driving around the parking lot of a dealership that's identified with the same brand that I own. What is the normal period of time between people getting new vehicles? I'm at the beginning of that curve. So you're starting to see a lot of signals here that would help somebody like Google identify to a business, this person is now starting down that path toward purchasing another vehicle. So now the content that's relevant to me starts to become what are the up and coming new features? What's the new legislation changing that's going to force new features into these vehicles? What are the best deals that are on the market? What time of year should I be shopping? Like, these types of scenarios. And then as a business, you start to pick up on these clues. Like, I still get emails and phone calls from the Toyota dealership for the truck that I bought 6 years ago from them. And I'm like, I don't know how many times I have to tell you I no longer own the vehicle.
Right.
I mean, like just stop calling me, just stop emailing me. And I've unsubscribed and I've requested to be removed from call lists. And so we're not there yet. From a content production standpoint, you have to understand as a consumer, when I go through this journey, what are the pieces that I do? And the way I break this down for businesses is I say, okay, put yourself in the consumer's shoes. So you're going to buy this product. Record every discrete step in your process to purchasing that product. What does every single discrete step look like? And now, do you have content that matches every step on that journey? How do you position yourself along that journey? And what will happen is you will realize, hey, you know what? There's 14 steps, 14 discrete steps that I go through before I buy this product. Well, I need 14 pieces of content on this. Well, no, you don't actually need 14 pieces of content. You only may need 5 or 6 pieces of content, because they can kind of do double duty addressing one or two of these things from different angles. And so it leads the person in there. Or you may also look at it and say, the person who's on step 3 of research, they're still in research. So classify that as one element of content that you're going to do. You're not going to do, this is my first touch point on research. I've dug a little deeper on touch number 2. Number 3, I'm going hardcore technical details. No. You can build one piece of content that serves all 3 of those users. That's not a problem. But then what's the next step after that? The next step after I've read about everything might be that I want videos on it, or it may be that I want videos more likely, and then I want the empirical data afterwards, because I heard you say something in the video, but I need the actual measurements for it because I need to go check something.
That's interesting. So are there sort of generic patterns that you can identify of, like, because there's the specific customer journey, like for buying a car or this and that, but you're just making me wonder if there are identifiable generic patterns of, like, people buying something that costs over $10,000 typically.
Absolutely.
XYZ. Okay, so that is how
Absolutely.
how can content creators get on top of that?
And I think you can. I think you can take those numbers. You say $10,000. I think you can take those numbers down to $100.
Okay.
For some people, anything less than $100 is an impulse buy. They don't really care. They don't consider. They consider it a cost of learning versus anything else. And if the product is good and reliable and lasts long term, they feel like they've won something. But if they spend $60 on it and it dies within a year, then they've had the experience, they've learned from it, and they're okay with that. They don't consider that a loss. So I think that the actual number is less important than the fact that there are people at every point when you attach dollars to it that will engage in that behavior. So for some people, if you're a multimillionaire, you probably don't care about a $5,000 purchase. It's not that big of a deal to you. If you're an average working person, you care a great deal about a $5,000 purchase. That is a big deal to you. And so, there is that. But the difficulty in this is, I don't know of any sources that have this data. Rephrase that. There are sources that have this data. There are consumer credit and monitoring agencies that have all of this data. The difficult part is getting access to it. You have to be a large corporation, and it costs a lot of money to get access to it. And that gets you access to raw data. That doesn't get you the insights pulled from that data. So that's another layer. And that's where you're going to have to spin up machine learning in some way to actually get you those patterns, to find that stuff, right? So this is a pretty big deal,
right.
Which is why I think we haven't really seen this happen in any meaningful way, like a third-party service offering this kind of thing, right? And it's difficult to get your money back on it because you're going to pay a few $1 million up front to get access to the data. And then on the flip side of it, who's going to pay you double that to make this profitable for your business? That's a lot of businesses that need to have a subscription with you, and it's going to that's a pretty risky business model right there, right?
Right.
So, but companies on their own, businesses on their own, they can do surveys, they can talk directly with their customers, they can look at their own data in terms of the purchase funnel and what that all looks like. If you're an e-commerce company, you can do a great deal of this research in your own system. I mean, think about a company like REI, for example. I love REI. And so when you actually go and you're on their website, they've got photographs, they've got written text on there, they've got videos for things. All of those elements are discreetly trackable where you can tell, okay, well, on this product, X number of people watched the video X number of times. And that's an individual. So I came back and watched the video 3 times. So obviously I'm looking for 3 different things before I make a purchase. I'm looking at it for different reasons. Did I come in and watch the video, then go read the text? And did I click on the technical tab so I see all of the statistics about this object? And then I come back to the video again? Like, what do those patterns look like internally? And that helps you.
That probably is somewhat scalable too, because I have a lot of friends and I've done a lot of work with really small companies, and there's always that, like what you're talking about really benefits from a lot of data, like Amazon.
Yeah.
Or who knows what
Absolutely.
They know. But even that, just what you were just saying, because everything you just described there, that sounds like you could do it like with just Google Analytics or fairly simple.
So some would come from Google Analytics. Some would be from your own analytics and your own systems. I mean, if you have an e-commerce platform, you'll have your own data in there. In some cases, you would benefit from just setting up discrete campaigns for things. And you could use analytics for this and track things, like literally track people on yourself for yourself in meaningful campaign patterns. So brainstorm some patterns that you think might exist, go ahead and set up campaigns for them and see what that data comes back like. And it gives you a different view of things. I was told once, and I think this is a brilliant idea. Take all of the URLs on your website, put them in a spreadsheet, and then next to each one of them, assign a dollar value to it. And then when you're done all of that, now a lot of them will just be like zeros or a penny or 10 cents, whatever. They're arbitrary numbers. When you're done with all of that, resort the entire spreadsheet by value. And what you will see is a view of your website based on the revenue production from your pages. And it gives you a completely different outlook on how to approach optimizing your website. Because on some of those pages will be actual converting pages where it's a sales message, or it's the actual conversion page, or it's the thank you page afterwards. But it also includes, before you leave, here's a discount on another product if you want it. And so all of these things start telling you about a subset of each one of your customer groups that will engage with you in different ways, and the triggers that you can use to get more out of their wallets and more frequency of visit. And so, like taking these alternate views of your own data, and this could extend all the way down to your log files. I mean, we've been talking about log files since way before analytics existed.
That's
And
how
I
you
mean,
used to measure stuff. That was the
right,
only thing you
exactly. I
had
mean,
back in the day. Yeah.
well, before we had Google Analytics, we had log files, and then you had counters on pages and whatnot. But if you were truly a stats geek, you were in your log files and you were parsing the data. And today that's still just as valid as it ever has been. Is go into your log files, take a look at these things, identify patterns in there, and pull that forward. Now, what's really important about this is, and this actually bleeds over into two other areas that I think are extremely relevant to all of this. Um, First off is the concept of holistic integration. We have for 12, 15 years seen a siloing within an organization. You had, and it started with pay-per-click and SEO, right? The brother and sister categories. And immediately a business looked at this and went, oh, hang on a second. PPC is so trackable. I mean, I can track the dollar and the $7 return on it. That's awesome. That's fantastic. Hey, SEO, how does your tracking look? And the SEO is kind of looking at them going, you can't talk to me for a year. I don't, what do you mean tracking? I mean, I got people to the website. What did you do with them? Like, and that's always been the bane of SEO is how much money did I spend and what was my return on it? That is the difficult thing to crack from an SEO's perspective. And it's largely because there's time and other factors involved. And we all get it. One is squishy, one is solid. That was very straightforward. And as a result, a lot of businesses said, well, we're going to take the solid and we're going to keep it in its own group over here. And we're going to leave the squishy on its own. And the problem now is, in order for the squishy to be effective in a world where solid has become increasingly expensive, you need to support the squishy with data. Well, that data comes from the solid. It comes from your analytics group. It comes from your paid search group. It comes from your social metrics team. It comes from all of these areas to inform the world of search why we should be focusing on this phrase, this question, this topic, this contact, or this content in this context. That's incredibly important today. And that we're at the very beginning of. People will talk about context all day long. There's a great example at our company's event here a couple of weeks ago called Onward 17. We had a couple of the founders from Cortana and what became Google Assistant. And they were talking about this, and Ed from Microsoft gave this great example. He's like, context. I get an email and my voice assistant says, you got an email from your doctor. Would you like me to read the results of your last checkup? And the answer is yes, please do. And the same email comes in and you're in your car with a group of work colleagues. In one instance, it's okay to read the results of the test of the rash. In the other instance, you definitely do not want your assistant reading about the results of the rash. And it is highly contextual. And it's contextual because I am a different person depending on where I am environmentally. And that's the important part. That's the tough part. That's the newness of all of this.
Right.
So what I tell people is this, like voice search. Oh, wow, it's scary. It's crazy. I don't know how to participate. It's a single answer. I was struggling to be at the top of the first page, and now you're telling me there's one or done. Oh my God, life is over. That's not the case at all. The reality with this is that all of the investments you've made already in terms of video content, in terms of usability, in terms of mobile-friendly websites, in terms of secure, in terms of marking stuff up with schema, all of those things inform how you perform in a voice search world. They are not direct things. It's not like if you turn on secure, you will be the one answer spoken aloud. There is nothing like that. And I cringe when I hear SEOs asking questions along those lines where they want to oversimplify it. That is dangerous, dangerous ground, way thin ice to be on. Instead, if you listen to what the search engines are telling you and take it at face value, they are interested in the customer's journey. They are interested in being useful to the customer. If you adapt that and that line of thinking to every single thing you're doing, every investment you make, every decision you make, you will start building a better website with a better consumer experience, and that will resonate with the engine. That I can't stress that enough. I mean, this isn't a throwaway message that the engines put out there. The engines are literally at the beck and call of consumers. The engines don't state the reality that the consumer lives with. The consumer's actions restate every day the results that we all see. If no one showed up and used Google, you'd have a static scenario where nothing would change. If half of the population showed up one day and searched on one particular thing, it would train the algorithms to tilt in a certain direction. And therefore, everyone would see everything trending in that direction. Like, that's the power of consumer interaction. And of course, we wish that the engines would give us more data about these things, but there is a very high cost to that, both in terms of delivering the data, making it actionable, and in terms of protecting themselves and keeping things that are proprietary and advantageous to them versus their competitors held within their own systems. And I mean, it is difficult. As a marketer, I want all the data. Just give it to me and let me figure it out. I've been on the other side of that equation where I understand that, the value proposition of what I'm looking at from a data perspective means more to my company's growth and market share than if I were to give it away to a small subset of marketers for them to incrementally increase something. Especially since I know that the systems are getting smarter and more intelligent all the time. And so what was important today, 2 years from now, will be irrelevant. So me giving you, the marketer, a small advantage today, you're just coming back in 2 years saying, I need another small advantage. I need another small advantage. Meanwhile, if I have that data for myself, I could create advantages that multiply for my company over the next 5-10 years and set a new path. And so there's a huge side of this that I haven't spoken about yet, which is, I talked a little bit about this. You need to combine. You need to have data from multiple sources available in the world of SEO so that they truly understand the picture of what converts, what engages, what people are looking for and engaging with versus just clicking on quickly and leaving and all of those signals. But there's the other side of this, which is getting your company in order to allow the value to flow through. And that's where things like, I have a concept I've been talking about called the digital knowledge manager. And it's effectively a job, but you have to understand manager is a verb here, not a title. This is a very senior level job. And their job is literally to be able to arc across the entire company to understand all of the subsets of all of the features within a company that can be digitized, whether it's name, address, phone number, white papers, videos the company has produced, personalities that are attached to the brand, products, and so on. All of these things start to become digital assets that need to be managed and can be leveraged in discrete ways. And you need somebody who's aware of all of these pieces and all of the projects in your company so that they can plug the right piece into the right project at the right time so you're not missing opportunities. And that is a huge win for companies. And we're starting to see big companies like T-Mobile and School of Rock and businesses like this, FedEx, who actually have somebody in that role. That is their.
Is that like a? It's at its perfect implementation. It sounds like that would be a C-suite kind of level job, right?
It can be, or it's very close to, right? It's a very senior role. Some of these folks are director level folks. Some of them are. You could have a lower level, like a manager, a director, but that depends entirely on the company and the company's makeup. So if you have a truly progressive C-suite and management structure, leadership team within your company, they will take the input and feedback from somebody at a lower level, whether they're a manager or director, because they believe and understand the value in the input. They get that, right? And in some cases, this is a formal role. In some cases, it may be an informal role that helps out a business.
One role that's out there, like one of the reasons I started this podcast is because the term content strategy is so imprecise. But there's this sort of nerdy enterprise level implementation of content strategy that's, I think, as a Venn diagram, would overlap quite a bit with that role you're talking about, that knowledge, that knowledge manager, digital knowledge manager. So that kind of gets into that. And again, I'm thinking about the Venn diagram between your digital strategy, your content strategy, and then your marketing strategy. Like all those things kind of coming together. But having this digital knowledge manager at the kind of, you picture this role like right in the middle of all that, like
Yep.
everything that's digitizable in that company,
Yep.
they have some, if not control, but say over it, or
Well, and this is the thing. It's not a scenario where you centralize control of everything under one person, right? This is a scenario where you streamline the flow of information through a person. And that is usually just through inclusion. So they're included in the project flow so that they know when to offer input. Because it's not like they get veto power over anything or that all employees report into them. Oftentimes this role is going to be a scenario of unofficial influence where it's a dotted line, or it may not even be a dotted line. It may simply be a line of sight scenario. But the people in the company, all of the different management, all of the different leadership team people need to be aware enough and agreeable enough to allow this to exist. So if I
now,
am the digital
yeah, does this role exist many places? Have you
Uh,
seen many
Not a
folks
lot, but
yeah.
but I know T-Mobile has this, School of Rock has this, FedEx has this. I talked about it at an internal event we had, and one of our clients, literally 2 weeks later, spun up a job and said, "We want to hire this for our company. Do you have a job description?" And so 2 days later, I had written a job description for it and said, "Here you go." I actually have an article about this on entrepreneur.com. So if folks are interested in going to check it out, there's a
I'll
very
link to
deep
that in the
dive.
show
Yeah,
notes. Yeah.
there's a very deep dive on that specifically, the DKM construct. But it's all a part and parcel of this bigger thing that we're talking about, right? And voice search kind of forces things like this to the forefront, right? Because a lot of businesses are going to have SEOs running around saying voice search, voice search, voice search, and because it has the word search in it, it's under my control. And here's what we have to do, and we have to write questions and answers, and that's how we get included in it. And no, this is literally like playing 3D chess. We are no longer two-dimensional, and it's only now that we realize we have been playing a two-dimensional marketing game all of these years, because now voice frees us from that input of touch. It allows us to take that step out and essentially, as human beings, multitask. And if there's anything we can, I think, all agree on with human beings, is we are lazy. So if I could do something by asking for it out loud versus having to go do it myself, that's going to catch on. There's no question. And when you look at the data, I mean, there's forecasts that by the end of 2018, we're going to see 130% increase in the number of devices accessed via voice. And I mean, today, we're recording this show today. It is Cyber Monday. Go look at the early morning reports. This morning, it was, I think, 9 a.m. on the, or actually it was 8 a.m. on the Pacific Coast. And I was seeing news stories saying that Cyber Monday sales are already at $840 million. I mean, if you think about the volume of purchasing that happens on a day like today, and then you look at, well, how many speakers and systems have been sold by Google, by Amazon? How many phones do we have out there that are activated with Google Assistant or with Siri in them? Like, 2018 is truly going to be the year of voice actualization. It is going to be hugely mainstreamed in 2018. I mean,
That's really, and I might check back with you in a year, and we'll follow up on this.
definitely.
But I think in terms of people anticipating this, especially content creators and content managers, and digital managers of all kinds anticipating this, I'm trying to remember like that year or that moment when everybody realized that, like, oh crap, mobile is an actual thing. We better be
Yeah.
responsive. And yeah, do you see any lessons in that and other transitions?
Absolutely, and I think the lessons are they're kind of after the fact, because we are going to find ourselves as a generation of content producers. Um, Voice is the hockey stick for voice is going to be much steeper than it was for mobile. Okay, and people had time with mobile. So I was still with the search engine at the time, and I was running around telling people, mobile first, responsive design, progressive web apps, get out there, do these things. And people were like, yeah, we'll get to it, we'll get to it. And by and large, they got to it, right? That same kind of approach is not going to work in the world of voice search. If you're not already if you don't already have a good mobile program, if you're not already marking up your content with schema.org and other languages, if you're not already developing the Q&A protocols, and you're not already producing videos that people want to engage with, if you're not already doing these things, that is a massive amount of work for you to wake up to in January and say, all right, it's January 3rd. We've shaken off the New Year blues. Let's just go ahead, roll up our sleeves. What do we got to do? Oh, you've got a crap ton to do.
Yeah.
In fact, so much so that you're already behind the curve. And that's where I think a lot of businesses are going to find themselves. They're way behind this curve. You're talking about brands, big, small, whatever, that are still trying to wrap their head around social media programs and how to use that as an interactive play with consumers, and to use that to help shape consumer trust and activation with a brand. And they're still struggling in so many cases. I mean, we see it all the time, right? There were examples just, this past week where, social media program lights up and you could tell that it was a standardized post that was meant to have information added to it between the brackets. And instead, that template was posted up live for the world to see. And it's like, okay, yeah, we get it, human failure in that instance. But that's still the state of the union. And so when you think about, okay, yeah, we're still building out our content program, most companies are still trying to understand, for the investment that we put into building out content, what is our return on it? Now what we're telling them is, not only do you have to build out that content program ASAP, you actually have to build it contextually relevantly to a consumer's journey and what that looks like, because the engine is discreetly looking for usefulness across a wide range of scenarios. And then how do you best fit in with that?
Let me back up a little bit from that, because you talked a couple times about schema.org and the importance of that kind of markup. Are there other taxonomical things and other kinds of metadata you can attach to content? Like, what's the best way to your mind, or not the best way, but some of the best ways to contextualize this content for these new scenarios?
So there's a couple of things you can do. We talk about schema and we talk about this concept of marking up your content, right? That's all well and good. And you can use, there are multiple languages. You've got schema.org, you've got OG from Facebook, you've got RDFA, you've got microformats. So there are a number of different objects, all right? I think the reason that we kind of take the lazy route and we continually talk about schema.org is what was developed by the search engines. It's a joint program between Google and Bing. They both maintain it together to mutual advantage. And so anytime an engine steps forward and says, I back A, why wouldn't you naturally go to A? And over time, what we've seen is a dedicated investment. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of objects you can mark up inside schema.org right now. So I would challenge a business out there to not find something that is relevant to themselves or their content in some way. There is no doubt in my mind, 100% of businesses, there is something relevant to them out there. Something
one other thing for the show notes, I've looked at a lot of different schema.org references, and it's so, it could be pretty dense and hard to wade through, especially for like a mere simple content creator like I've often been. But how are there specific realms within the schema.org world that are that if you're prioritizing your markup activities in your content creation organization, are there things within the schema.org scheme that would make the most sense to focus your efforts on to be ready for voice? There's not.
No.
Okay.
No. And so here's the thing. Schema is literally an equal opportunity space. So the way you approach this is, whatever your content is, if you believe you're producing relevant content, which obviously you should be, then you need to go and find, is there relevant markup to that content? Whether that is transcription from a video, the video itself, images, if it's about a person, a place, or a thing, like all of these different facets then come to kind of bear on that piece of content. And you select what is most relevant. Keep in mind here, okay, all is not, land of unicorn and lollipops, right? Like, if you try to spam by selecting schema pieces that are not relevant, but you somehow think you want to be relevant for it, and your content is a stretch to reach that relevancy, yeah, the engines will just ignore you. Like, you won't get credit for it. They ignore it. I do not believe, I have no proof of this, but I do not believe there are outright penalties for doing this. But honestly, if you're the kind of person that wants to play in that side of the sandbox, I don't really have a lot of time a day for that. Like, you just do the right thing and move
I think,
on.
like you said, we've been at this 20 years, and that's the kind of the modern day equivalent of white text on a white background.
Yeah, totally.
Like, come on,
totally. And yet,
yeah.
yet I just like 3 weeks ago, I'm in Las Vegas at PubCon, and I have people asking me about this. Like, can I use extra schema tags that are, only somewhat related to this and wrap them around that same content? And I'm like, why is your focus on inventing a new form of spam? Like, why? Like, I don't get it. I understand that you want to say proprietarily, this is what it's for, but I also believe it's relevant for this and this. I understand that. Schema's not a graduated system, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm a 90% match on this, I'm a 60% match on this, and a 40% match on that, right? That's actually the choice of the algorithm to make that decision. So you tell it what you're relevant for, and you let it figure out the rest. And there's a bigger scenario at play here, right? Because you'll have links pointed at you in certain ways that will give off those signals that you are tangentially related to something, if not directly. And so we don't need to worry about that, right? Just use it as intended and move forward. And it is, you said something, and it's very true. This stuff is dense. This is not easy stuff to wrap your head around. This is code level, roll up your sleeves, get in there at literally the code level, making things change inside that. And then when you hit F5 and refresh that page, if it's broken, you might have just broken the page. Like, it does require technical know-how to implement these things. There are other services, and hand in the air, I will state this right up front. This is a blatant plug. Yext actually has a system that allows you to do that. One small piece of code, use the interface in your account, fill in the blanks, and all your schema populates. And there are other services as well that allow people to implement schema in a more simplified fashion.
Well, there must be integrations in most content management systems.
Yeah, I mean, you see these things, I'm sure that you can get this in WordPress as well. And so it simplifies it to the point where it's fill in the blanks, right? And that kind of thing, I've got full respect for it. As long as it's technically accurate and maintained, full respect for it. It will help you do that job. And for a lot of businesses, that will be all they need. The most technical aspect is take this piece of JavaScript, install it in your code. You're going to pay your programmer once to do that one thing. And then once it's all lit up, you go back to managing this on your own, piece by piece. It's still work. You still have to manage it, but you're not paying the programmer every single time to update every single thing. You take on the onerous part of that work, which lowers your outright cost. And so there are ways for non-technical people to approach this and still see those benefits. Whether you're technical or not is not up to the engines. Like, they don't care, right? What they care about is relevancy and usefulness to their client base, the searchers. And so it's no longer an option. We had this kind of laissez-faire approach when we first mentioned schema, and I know because I was part of the team trumpeting this from the search engines, this very laissez-faire, we'll get to it. Maybe we'll mark it up. Maybe we won't, blah, blah, blah. And people just didn't. Businesses didn't. And we were like, guys, it's important. You have to do it. And of course, what wasn't being talked about is there is a project plan for everything, just like there is with schema. And the engine knows that once adoption reaches X percentage, their data value increases by X. And that's their goal. Their goal is better detail, deeper trust, more intrinsic understanding of objects and what answers the question. So if we look at voice search today, I think voice search has the ability to crack this industry. And you're going to have winners and losers in a major way, because we are going to have the people that are prepared to take advantage of these systems and these services and be truly useful, focusing on customer journey, focusing on usefulness, giving good experiences, being secure, all of that side of things. They're going to move forward. And they may be a big brand, they may be a no-name brand. The engine's not going to care because the consumer doesn't care. Consumer loyalty has gone way down. And so, I mean, I'll put my hand in the air and say this. When I was a kid growing up, there was one brand of tools that was in my father's toolbox. And so as I grew up, teenager, my 20s, there was one brand of tools that was in my toolbox. And now if you walk into my garage, you've never heard of over half of the brands of tools that I have because they never existed. But
Right.
what has happened is the cost of manufacturing the quality tools has come down so much that it's allowed an entire economy of no-name brands to show up and say, we are going to be Amazon only brands, and we will only sell through Amazon. We will lower our prices way down because we can do volume. And you know what? It's still a good quality tool. It does what I need it to do, and that's all I care about.
Wow.
And that's the reality of a searcher today.
That's interesting. So that kind of gets at like how disruptive this can be in general. That like if you're a
Very.
savvy, and you see this all the time, like the technically savvy people, kind of leveraging those kinds of things. Like I'm kind of surprised that SEOs, or like whenever the search engines, when I was doing SEO, whenever the search engines told me something, I was like, crap, I'm doing that right away. So I'm
Yeah.
kind of surprised that there are still people who, I don't know, are not just fully on board with schema.org. But
Yeah.
anyhow, but the disruptive nature of that, I guess, how can content creators be as disruptive? Like, what can you do to? I guess just marking up is going to be the start to
So
that. But
marking up is important. There's no question. But there will be times when the content doesn't deserve a markup, where there's nothing to mark up, right? And the reality is, I think the far bigger focus for content creators is context, is understanding, not just here's the keyword and I'm writing about it and I'm including all the information, but understanding as I'm writing this, what is the state of mind of my reader and how many states of mind may they inhabit that I could write for. So are they researching? Are they close to the sales portion of the funnel, or are they at the top of the funnel? Is this a mobile experience? So if I'm on the go somewhere, I'm going to be less intrinsically engaged with it than if I'm sitting on my sofa at home with a drink on my table doing research. And understanding those kind of modes of the consumer, because how you write for them will be different in all instances. And I also believe that people seriously need to double down on video production. This is something that anybody can do and everybody needs to be doing it. Mobile devices, just take a look at them. I have an iPhone 10. It is an amazing machine. It is a game changer. Absolutely, fully agree with it. Big screen, small form factor. I love it. Can't say enough about it. Worth every penny of my money. And there were a lot of them. But I would much rather watch a video on that screen than read something on that screen, because it doesn't matter how big you make that text, it is still a small screen. And the experience of blowing up the text and having to scroll more is suboptimal. So give me a video every time. That's what consumers want today. So creating all of your words, that's awesome. And that's useful to a search engine. The average consumer ain't going to read it. And if they're not going to engage with it, your usefulness goes way down.
gotcha.
So if I'm creating this content, I'm thinking about like, okay, how do I get audio from this? How do I get, and this is, we had this conversation before we started recording, right? Like,
Right.
how are we going to use this today? And it's like, well, we can use video this way. We can use audio for podcasting. We can do a transcript for this. And that's how people need to be thinking about content creation. So when you identify what you're going to talk about and the context within within which it lives, next thing you're going to do is say, all right, does this lend itself to, we should record a video that's 20 minutes long and then do a transcript from that? Yeah, probably. In fact, that may be a good pattern for most content creators to get into, because you are going to do the work anyhow. So there's no point in writing it all out and then using that as a script to then go record a video. It won't match directly anyhow. And the
Right.
transcript from the video will need to match the video. So start with the video and back into an article if that's your idea to do the blog post. It's a whole lot easier to edit the transcript into the blog post than it is to match a video directly to the words you've already written. So just take that shortcut, create the video.
Just yet another way where everything is turned upside down in this crazy
Right.
world. Yeah,
Right.
no, but that makes perfect sense, because that's exactly my approach in this podcast. Is like,
Right.
have a good conversation with Duane, and then I transcribe it, show notes, kind of back out
Mhm.
from the
Mhm.
conversation. Yeah.
And you don't have to use the video. It's digital film. It's cheap.
Yep.
So if you don't end up using the video, throw it on the floor. Who cares? That's fine. Like it could be useful in the future. It might not be. It doesn't matter. What matters is you have content from it. And that makes a difference. That I think is the big game changer for a lot of folks. So if you're a content creator and you're on the SEO side, you're used to thinking in terms of writing in Evernote, writing in Word, writing in Google Documents, and these kinds of things. maybe time to rethink that and say to yourself, okay, you know what? We're going to write up 10 bullet points here. We're going to do a video on that. And then we're going to take that transcription from the video and we're going to fashion that into a blog post that follows this. And that's how we're going to approach this content creation.
Great. Well, hey, Duane, I just noticed we're up over an hour. I knew this would happen, and I'm totally fine with it.
Totally.
Which is great. I like I said at the start, before Duane and I went on the air, I was like, oh, good, geez, I could talk to you all day. We better be careful. And sure enough, we've gone. So I want to wrap it up here, just because we both have busy days ahead of us, and it's Cyber Monday. We got to go look at all the data about what's going on out there.
Yeah.
But I want to thank you so much, and I hope I can come back and check in with you. Like you said, like you think 2018 is going to be this pivotal year. I'd love to revisit this.
Absolutely.
Around, early next year or late next year, and see how things have unfolded. And it's super. It's just great to catch up too. It's fun going. I haven't done SEO in years, and so to kind of revisit that world has been just a hoot too. So
yeah, it's I appreciate being on the show today, Larry. It's been great catching up with you, and I mean these topics are they're so fascinating. It's like the first major pivot in the world of SEOs in a decade.
Yeah, that's super exciting. That's and I think you were the person who articulated it best. And I'm so glad I was able to get you on, just kind of get right at the start of this. So, well, thanks so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next week for another content strategy interview.